My best friend's husband called me looking for her. She'd told him she was with me. I was sitting alone at home. That was when I started counting how many times she'd used my name. I am a 30-year-old female. I had a best friend of 8 years named Diane, and this is the story of how I found out she had been using my name as an alibi for over 2 years without my knowledge, and how I found out in the worst possible way. So me and Diane had been close since our early 20s, the kind of friendship where you know each other's families and you have years of inside jokes and you're the person they call at midnight when something goes wrong. And I loved her in that uncomplicated way you love someone you have grown up alongside. And I want you to hold that in your mind while I tell you the rest of this because it matters. Diane got married 4 years ago to a man named Paul who I liked. He was quiet and steady, and he loved her in a way that was obvious even in small moments. The way he listened when she talked, the way he remembered small details she had mentioned weeks earlier, and I had been at their wedding and I had given a toast, and I had meant every word of it because I genuinely thought they were good together, and I was happy for her. About 2 years into their marriage, I noticed Diane was reaching out to me more than usual, not in a needing to talk way, but in a checking in way. Quick texts asking what I was up to that weekend or whether I had plans on a particular Tuesday evening, and I thought she was just being a more present friend, which I appreciated, and I matched the energy and told her my plans and thought nothing more of it. The call came on a Thursday evening in November, and it was Paul, and his voice was tight in a way that made me sit up immediately, and he said there had been a family emergency. His father had been taken to hospital, and he was trying to reach Diane, and she wasn't picking up, and he was going to try her office, but he wanted to check with me first since she had told him she was meeting me for dinner. I looked at my kitchen table where I was sitting alone eating leftovers, and I told Paul that I had not seen Diane that evening and that we did not have dinner plans. And there was a silence on the line that lasted long enough to feel like a wall going up. And then he said, "Okay," in a voice that had changed, quieter and different in a way I recognized, because I have heard that voice before from people realizing something in real time. And he thanked me and hung up. I sat at my kitchen table for a long time after that call, and I thought about the check-in texts, and I started going back through them in my memory, and I began to count the number of times over the past 2 years that she had asked me what I was doing on a specific evening, and the number was higher than I wanted it to be. Diane called me the next morning, and I let it ring, and then I called her back an hour later when I had decided what I wanted to say, and before she could say anything I told her that Paul had called me looking for her, and that I had told him we hadn't had dinner plans, and she went silent, and then she said, "Claire, I can explain." And I told her I didn't want an explanation right now. I wanted an answer to one question, which was how many times she had used my name without telling me. She was quiet for a long time, and then she said it had been happening on and off for about 2 years, and that she had never told me because she knew I wouldn't have agreed to it, and I told her she was right, I wouldn't have, and she said she was sorry, and I told her I believed her, and that I needed some time, and I got off the phone. I want to tell you what I sat with over the next few days because it wasn't simple. There was the obvious thing, which was that my best friend had been lying to her husband and using my name to do it. And then there was the less obvious thing, which was that she had made me a liar without my consent, that Paul had been deceived partly because my name had been attached to the deception, and that if he ever looked back through those evenings he was going to think of me as a person who had covered for her, and I had not covered for her. I had just lived my life, not knowing I was being used. I also had to sit with the question of what was actually happening in those hours Diane was telling Paul she was with me, and I didn't know the answer to that, and I thought about whether I wanted to know, and I thought about Paul and his father in the hospital and him standing somewhere making calls trying to find his wife, and I thought I owed him honesty if not answers. I texted Paul, and I asked if we could speak, and he called me within a few minutes, and I told him everything I knew, which was not much. I told him I had not known I was being used as an alibi, and that I was sorry, and that the dinner plans on Thursday had not been the only time, and I told him I couldn't tell him what Diane had been doing because I genuinely didn't know. And he thanked me, and his voice was very quiet and very controlled, and I could hear what it was costing him to hold it together. And I felt terrible about my role in something I had not chosen to be part of. Diane and Paul separated about 6 weeks after that call, and in the time between Paul and I speaking and the separation, Diane reached out to me several times, and I took one of those calls, and the conversation was long and painful, and what she told me was that she had been meeting someone else, that it had started about 2.5 years earlier, that she had not known how to stop it and had not been able to bring herself to end her marriage, and that she had been living inside the situation, telling herself it would resolve itself, and using my name to buy herself time. I told her that I understood how people get into things they don't know how to get out of, but that I needed her to hear specifically what she had done to me, that she had attached my name to her dishonesty without asking me, and that every time Paul had heard my name over the past 2 years, he had been trusting me without knowing he was trusting me, and I had not earned that trust or offered it, and she had spent it anyway. And she cried and said she knew, and I believe she did know. I think she had known the whole time, and had done it anyway because she needed it and I was available, and she trusted that I would forgive her eventually. She was right that I would forgive her eventually. It took about 8 months and a lot of conversations with people who know me well, but I got there because she is someone I have loved for a long time, and people are complicated, and I am not interested in being the kind of person who cannot hold complexity, but forgiving her and being her best friend again are not the same thing, and I think she understands that now. Paul reached out to me about a year after everything settled and thanked me for telling him the truth on that call. He said he had known something was wrong for a long time before Thursday and that my honesty had not broken something that was intact. It had just confirmed what he had already been sensing, and that knowing had been better than not knowing, even though neither option had been good. And I was glad he told me that, because I had thought about that call many times and wondered whether I had done the right thing by being honest. I think about the check-in texts sometimes, and I think about how ordinary they seemed, how I had read them as warmth, and the whole time they had been logistics, and I think about how much of what we accept from the people we love we accept without looking at it directly. And I think the thing this whole experience taught me is that love without honesty is just a story two people are telling themselves, and eventually the story runs out of room.